In my previous video, I created the Techno track from scratch using a single VCV Rack 2 patch in Ableton Live. So I thought it would be interesting to talk a little bit about this patch, how it works, how I built it, what the connections are, where all the sounds are coming from, etc. And also a little bit about the live set template in which I integrated this patch. So the idea of using a modular synth for live performance is not new, but I'm just getting into it. There are people like Colin Benders and Mylar Melodies who have done many videos about this topic and who are absolute masters at this art. And this way of working has a few big advantages. The time limit that I had in the video especially is really something that sparks creativity. So let me show you how this patch works. First off, the Ableton Live set. There are several audio tracks here which have recorded the different outputs from VCV Rack 2, and then on this Midi track here there is one instance of VCV Rack 2. If we have a look at that, there's this huge patch and I'll go through some of the parts, what makes it tick. First off, it gets its Midi signal from this module here, and that then goes to a bunch of sequencers. So I have this drum sequencer here with 8 lanes, 7 of which are connected to different drum modules. And there's also the Sequel 8 here, a 3-lane CV gate sequencer, 3x8 steps that controls 3 synthesizer patches. So let's go to the drum sequencer first. On the first lane I have the pattern for the kick drum, and if you follow the gate here, you can see that it goes to these envelope generators here, which control the pitch of an oscillator and the VCA. And that's basically our kick drum. If I play it together with the synths here, the other drums are muted. So the VCA goes into this audio out module, and that is then picked up by one of the audio channels here, so I can record the kick separately. The other drum voices go to 2 mixers here, which also go to outputs. So this tom, this psyop and this drummer go to one mixer, and these hi-hats and crash, they go to the other mixer, and both have their own audio outputs. You can see here though they go to channels 9, 10 and channels 11, 12. So basically this is divided in lower pitched drum modules and higher pitched drum modules. And then there are the 3 synth voices here. This one here does a sub bass, and then these 2 here with oscillators from mutable instruments. This one goes to channel 5, 6 and that one to 6, 7. So they can all be recorded separately, and then there's some difference between the synth voices as well. But let's go back to the drum modules first. So they're all getting gates or tricks from the drum sequencer here. And other than that, I'm not doing a lot. I have these LFOs dotted about throughout the patch here and there. I actually haven't connected any of them. But these, of course, would give modulation capabilities over the different units. So if I unmute the drum voices here, let's listen to the low percussion voices together with the kick. And now I'll add in the cymbals and hats. That's basically all our drums going here. Okay, I'll mute some of the parts for now, and let's look at the synth voices. So first we have the sub bass voice here. So this uses the first row of the sequel here that goes into a VCO, an envelope controlling both the filter and the amplifier. The filter cutoff modulation isn't activated here. And this is just a very low tuned triangle wave. And that together with the kick drum provides the bottom end. Then there's this synth voice here, which gets its Midi and CV from the second row of Sequel 8. This is a Platts modulator called macro oscillator here. That's the famous module from Mutable Instruments. It's going through this nice stereo filter with multiple modes. The envelope generator is actually controlling the filter. So Platts actually has a trigger in, it can play individual notes. So in that sense, it's not just an oscillator, it has a built-in amplifier as well. And then the sound is finally going through this compressor here, which gets a sidechain input from the trigger from the kick. So let me just demonstrate the sidechain here. You can hear the pumping. Now it's a bit less. Onto the third synth voice. This takes CV and gate from the third row in the sequencer. And the oscillator here is the macro oscillator. That's the predecessor of Platts from Mutable Instruments, also a very capable oscillator. There is again this nice filter, and there are 2 envelopes for filter and amplifier. And actually this is a stereo signal path. I'm taking two outputs from the mono signal that goes into the filter and sending it into the VCA and the reverb. So this is a bit weird. I think I just could have done it with just the left side because it's actually the reverb making the whole thing stereo. And the reason for this is that instead of the plateau reverb here, I had the clouds module, which also generates a stereo signal. That's then going through this nice compressor, which has a sidechain input as well and is stereo. And again, for a nice pumping effect. And I'll just add in the sound here and mute the other synthesizer so you can more clearly hear what's going on. So a sequence in a very big reverb. This is without reverb. It gives this nice sort of drone, like mysterious thing going on here. So some of the sounds I created for the challenge and some of the sequences are basically random. So every module in VCV Rack has this option if you right click here to randomize, which is really cool because that's how I came up with the sound of the oscillator here, just by randomizing it. And actually the sequence that's played is also randomized. Okay, so now about control. I have an Akai APC40 MIDI controller, which I use for transport and record, as well as volume automation, pen automation, and send automation. But I also control some of the parameters in the patch here. So the filter of both this voice and of the other voice, they are controlled by this. The cutoff, as you can see here, as well as the resonance and the amount of control by the envelope. So that's the same for both filters. And then the two dials I have left on the controller control the threshold amount of the compressor here, as well as here, basically the amount of side chaining. So that's how I've set up MIDI control over this patch in VCV Rack. It's actually quite simple because there are only 8 parameters available with this controller. Another thing I've done for MIDI control is I've set up this filter here on the master bus, and that's also controlled with the APC40 controller. Very simple here, on off, and this gives the DJ style high pass filter. Let me just demonstrate. So playing, and also I can play with the frequency here and amount of resonance, and that's how that works. Now, one thing I'm thinking about is integrating this high pass filter into the VCV patch here, because then I won't have to switch between the MIDI channel where the VCV patch is on and the master channel. And there are also a lot of other things I'm thinking about adding or improving. So this is going to be a work in progress. But while I'm working it, I'm also going to be making music with it. And hopefully a lot of good stuff is going to come out of this patch. So there you have it, a little walkthrough of this patch that I can use to create techno music. I'm also thinking about other patches for other genres or modifying this, for instance, for more ambient style sounds. It's just a lot of fun to do, and it's actually very time efficient because you create a patch like this once and you can do many pieces of music with it. Of course, I'm also going to invest some time modifying and updating this patch, but all in all, I think it's a very cool way of working that I'm going to explore for the coming period of time. So that's all for now. Thank you very much for watching. Please give this video a like if you enjoyed it and consider subscribing if you want to see more of these kinds of videos. In any case, I will see you on the next one. Bye bye.